Hello food friends, my name is Veronica and I'm from VM Cooking. Welcome to our first cooking session today. We're gonna do some breakfast. That means we're gonna do biscuits and gravy. Biscuits and gravy, my way of course, so I'm gonna show you a really good way to make it easy and taste just a little bit different than from what you're maybe used to from any restaurant. So now, what we're gonna start with is the list of what you actually need. We have various spices, as you can see. I will explain those in a second. First, we're gonna go ahead and go over the actual ingredients. You're gonna need a breakfast sausage. I will always take the regular one. You can of course also take a spicy one if you feel like it. This is just my favorite brand, but of course you can choose any brand that you like. We also need half and half cream. Half and half cream because actual heavy whipping cream is a little bit more, I guess, calories that we don't need. And this is just also easier to make with this. You could also use milk, but it's just going to be a little bit too fluid if we're doing this. So half and half. Then of course you also need an onion. Now, if you have an onion this size, you will need only half of it. If you have a small onion, of course, take the full onion, so that's not a problem either. And of course, the biscuits. We use those. We just really look like the home style ones. You can also take the layered ones or whichever ones you like, but these are just our favorite buttermilk biscuits. Then, for the spices, you will need either this, which is gonna be garlic salt already paired with parsley, which today I'm gonna use for simplicity purposes. Of course, you can also take all the single ingredients. Now again, it's just cheaper and easier if you buy this. Of course, you can also use normal garlic, fresh garlic. If you want to just make a little bit more of a fancy kind of breakfast, you absolutely want to use fresh garlic, but it is not needed in this case. And then you also need white wine. White wine has to be definitely a dry white wine. Why is it gives you a lot of flavor that you would otherwise be missing in my specific recipe. In normal recipes, as you can have it here in Texas or generally in southern states, you will not find this. So I use it for a lot of purposes, and a lot of my recipes you will see white wine being used. It always has to be dry. So Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, anything that is a dry white wine will work. Also very important is pepper. Now, not any pepper, but I always use freshly ground pepper. Why? Is because the flavor just comes out way better if you use that versus, just the pretty much powdered pepper already. And that is it for the ingredients, other than flour. Now you'll see that I have this in this little neat glass. You have a really good reason to do something like this. Flour as well as sugar as well as rice, I always put in these containers. Reason why is sometimes you will have it that you have some kind of moths or anything in your pantry. It happens to any good household. Now you can prevent any damage to your sugar, to your flour, to your rice, or anything dry like oats or anything like that if you're just putting it in an airtight container. So you will see, this I got from IKEA, by the way. This one here has a rubber that will make it airtight. Just for me, like I said, it's very important. My mom had this unfortunate incident that she had moths in her pantry and she had to throw out everything. So we want to prevent that. That's why I put it in here. So just as a good tip for you, if you want to, or if you're not baking a lot with flour, which that's me, then it's definitely important that you keep it somewhere where you can have it for a long time. And that is it. So now we're gonna go ahead and get into actually cooking it. All right, for starters, we're actually gonna go ahead and preheat the oven to 350 degrees. You just follow pretty much those guidelines that you have on the actual biscuits. It says for a non-stick pan, we're gonna use 350, for all others 375. But again, always follow the instructions on the actual biscuits. All right, now we're gonna start with the onion, which is really pretty much the only thing that we're gonna use to cut. Everything else is already prepared. So for a little bit of a cutting technique, what I usually do, and this is how I learned it from my mom, is I usually will go halfway on the onion so that we still have tails, is what I call them, on both of the ends. Now we're going to use one of them. We're going to cut off the front part And then we're gonna just peel off whatever we don't need. All right, you wanna take the skin off. Anytime you see this dry part here, you want to take this skin off as well. Now, it is a little bit of a waste on the other end, but I really just don't like any kind of rubbery onion in my food. So, after we're done with this, what I usually do is I go cut strips like this, and then just cut it like that. Now, a lot of people will also go sideways. You can do this if you want to have perfect squares. In this case, for this recipe, it really doesn't matter because the onion will be so translucent you will not be able to see it later in the food at all, which is good for some people that don't like onion to begin with. But this is how I'm cutting it. This is how I'm cutting it. So now you see we have a pretty even kind of pattern here, and now we can go ahead and just cut it like any normal onion. Now, you will see a lot of people also using this part of your finger to actually stop the knife from going any further than this. You will not be able to cut yourself because usually you will have that bone above your fingernail. So you will use this to cut as much as you want and as thick as you want. You will only need to do it like really, really thin because again, this will just be used to get that flavor into the sauce. Now, the tail is gonna come in handy now because as you can see at some point we're sloping off here, so even that finger will not be able to help you. We can now grasp onto that little tail. I just always do this with these two fingers to cut the rest so that we have really the most out of the onion in this case. Now, I'm just cutting it as far as that rubbery part goes, and the rest goes into the trash can. Good. This is how it should look like in the end. We can go ahead and now go to our stove and fry all this together. Now we're at the stage where we can throw everything in together. What I usually use for frying is coconut oil. Coconut oil in this case is actually a solid one. This will definitely dissolve once it gets hot. I have to kind of scratch it out a little bit, but it is good for all kinds of purposes. I also use other oils for other purposes. In this case, I don't need to use a lot. I just need to use it to fry the onion a little bit to get it translucent before we throw in any sausage or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get it onto the highest heat so that it can warm up. I'm going to go ahead and throw in the onion. And then for those who don't know what translucent is, I'm going to go ahead and actually show you how that looks like. So, and then for some of them, you can already see that they're turning a little bit more see-through, is really what translucent is. So onions will do that once they get enough heat and once they fry enough. So definitely always watch the onion. We don't want it to burn because we don't want to have that burnt onion flavor in there. So we definitely want to make sure that this is not happening. While this is actually cooking, I'm going to go ahead and cut this open. I'm always cutting it along the slit so that we have the easiest way to open it. As you can see, they're already getting a little bit brown, so now we have to make sure that we act faster. I'm getting this out of the center because the center heat is always the most. And now we're going to throw in the sausage. As you can see, I mean that quite literally. getting all the rest because we don't have the money to send something like this in the trash. Yeah. And then just definitely separate the sausage as much as you can. You want it to look like if you were to fry ground meat for any kind of spaghetti or whatever you're doing, right, or lasagna. So you want it to be like very, very small. Now incorporate the onions in it because again, we don't want the onion to burn. So definitely keep all of this moving. Throwing all the stuff out. Don't do that, by the way. Usually what I'm cooking here, I forgot to mention, is actually for about 4 people. It's a generous 4 people in this case. Depending on how much you eat, we just like that dish a lot. So we usually eat a little bit more than maybe some people want to. But yeah, it's a really good portion for, since, you know, the biscuits, you would always want to serve about, what, 2 biscuits per person. So that's how it really plays out well. So if you're using exactly this amount of what I'm telling you here, then you will not have any issues serving all of them. And so you want to do this until you can see that everything is fried evenly. You can already see some of the pieces have a little bit more brown than the others, so we want to just keep going and mixing it until all of this is pretty even. And you also, oh, the oven is done. So you also will see that this will excrete some of the own juices that the sausage has, which is perfect because we will need this in a second too. This is all, I'm making all of my sauces myself, by the way. Everything I do is usually taking half and half cream and stuff like that. All that you need is the juices from the meat that you're using. You can do it with chicken, you can do it with beef, with pork, with everything you do. You can make a really, really good meat sauce. And this is my number one thing. I never use any kind of artificial flavors in any one of my sauces or anything like that. And as you can maybe tell, that dish is really not expensive to make because most of the spices you already have, if you're cooking at least a little bit, you will have most of the spices in your pantry already. And then you really just need the sausage, the cream, onion. If you're a wine drinker like me, you already have the wine as well. So should not be too big of an expense to actually make that dish. And it's really, really good. It's delicious. So I've had multiple people here trying that out and everyone just loves it. Okay, we're at this point now where we can go ahead and go to the next step. While this is sitting in its own sauce a little bit, we're going to go ahead and already throw in the spices. So I'm going to start with pepper. Again, freshly ground pepper is just great. And we love pepper, so that's why we're putting quite a little bit. You can already smell the pepper in there as I'm putting it in. That is the reason why I'm using freshly ground pepper. Then we're having my favorite garlic salt, lifesaver. So we're going to go ahead and put that one in. Now, you will not need a lot of it because the breakfast sausage already has salt. So if you're using those ingredients, the parsley, the garlic, and the salt separately, you will not need a lot of salt because the breakfast sausage itself already has some in it. So definitely work sparingly with that one compared to other dishes. All right, that looks good. So now we have it all spiced. Now we can go ahead and start making the sauce of this. I'm gonna let it sit for a little bit because we're gonna go ahead, move over and get these babies into the oven. All right, now this step is being done by my very talented husband, VM from VM Gaming, and he will be preparing our biscuits today.
Okay, so very simple. They give you a nice little tip right here so that way you can go ahead and peel and pop as it says on the can. So we're just going to go ahead and take the whole thing off. Then in general, you just want to find a nice, it says press spoon at seam until can pops open, but you can just simply slam it against the counter and that'll be just as good. So here we see that it's already open. So we're just gonna go ahead and take the biscuits. They already provide them in nice molds for you. So you just wanna place them evenly across the pan. So that way we can get everything nice and cooked evenly when it's in the oven. And this last one's trouble. All right, perfect. So now they're evenly placed. All right, so now we're just gonna go ahead and pop this into the oven and then we'll be good to go.
All right, so now you can already see it's because I had it sitting for a little bit. The meat is already a little brown, which is perfect. Like, I like it. Of course, you can fry it to whatever crisp level you want, but I just like it if it has a little bit of color. So now, the juices are still a little bit there, as you can see. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add to them. We're gonna first go with the white wine. Again, dry white wine. And just add as much as it needs to just sit. Now, usually that's maybe at the most a cup, depending on how much you really want to put in there. I usually add like maybe half a cup, just for the flavor of it. Now we're just gonna mix all this well so that all of it has the flavor. Because we don't put a lot of it in, it disappears quite fast. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and now add the flour. Flour, you will need this because you want to make it a sauce. If you just dump in the half and half cream now, it's just going to be very, very fluid. The flour helps it bind that. So as you can see, I just take a normal teaspoon and just sprinkle a little bit on it. I take usually about 3. And that is it. And mix it well. Once you mix it, you already can see the water disappears because it's now binding through the flour. Gets a little quiet. So once we have it mixed well, I'm gonna go ahead and just close my flour real quick. And take the half and half cream. Now, this is a 473 milliliters, so 500 milliliter-ish, or 1 pint, 16 fluid ounces. And just add it all over. Okay, not wasting anything. So now the only thing left to do is let it sit. That means we're gonna go ahead and turn down the heat to about medium to low and just let it sit for a little bit and simmer until it's ready to get eaten. All right, so as you can see, and please go ahead and always, even if it's just simmering, go ahead and mix it every once in a while. And as you can see, it's now a nice and creamy sauce that we can use. Our timer is also almost up. So I'm gonna go ahead and take out the biscuits here in a second. All right, I'm gonna turn off the stove for the sauce already because this one is done. Putting that away. Then the timer is up. I'm gonna turn off the oven and take out our biscuits. Came out perfectly, so now we're just gonna go ahead and have to serve it. All right, so now we're ready to serve. So I'm gonna go ahead and take, again, as I said before, we're always just serving 2. Usually we always make eggs with that too. My husband is very, very good at that. We're gonna go ahead and show you that another day. And I'm gonna take the sauce and generously pour it over those. Now I always take about 2 spoonfuls, so to say. And here you have biscuits and gravy. So Guten Appetit! All right, that is it for our cooking session today, and you have made biscuits and gravy. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I want to take this opportunity to also tell you about my husband, who is a Twitch streamer. So if you're interested in gaming, definitely go ahead and visit his pages. I posted them here for you, and also don't forget to tune in for our next cooking session.